Hello and welcome to Virtual Concert Hall's live music channel. My name is Chris Hour and I'll be your host for today's show. I have a really exciting show for everyone today because I'm interviewing the fantastic violinist, educator, content creator, and musician Christina Duncan. She comes to us from Salzburg, Austria, and I'm really excited to have a chance to talk to her about classical music education, in particular a recently filmed and a beautiful series at that on the legendary violin pedagogue Michael Frischenschlager and his Violin Technique guide, as well as we'll talk about the nature of classical music education in this day and age. And I'm sure everyone will learn so much from this insightful interview. I'm really excited to have her on for the first time at Virtual Concert Halls. All of this is to serve musicians and music lovers out there by exploring the beauty and genius out there of different pedagogues, as well as musicians who teach wonderfully and perform worldwide. And this is because it is our passion to be connecting musicians and audiences in real-time musical performances and live programs from around the globe. Hello and welcome to Virtual Concert Hall's live music channel. My name is Chris Au, and today there's an incredible show lined up for you. And I'm going to be interviewing Christina Duncan, a fantastic violinist who will be talking to us about a recently filmed series on violin technique, especially that of incredible pedagogue Michael Frischenschlager. But first, we'll talk about the season we have. We are about, 4 or 5 months into the season, and it's been exciting so far. We've had performances at the Carnegie Hall. We're organizing these amazing orchestra auditions that are coming up in January, and this is amazing, especially if you would like to perform with orchestra. We have orchestras all over the world, especially in the US, but also in the Czech Republic, as well as the Cairo Opera Orchestra. So more about that in 1 second, but let's have a quick look at what we have in store for this whole season. So as you can see, there's an incredible season up ahead. We have 2 to 3 more amazing opportunities for musicians from around the world to perform in Carnegie Hall at the Viol Recital Hall. We also have 4 incredible opportunities for musicians to play with orchestra, and not just in the US, but all over the world. This is such a great opportunity as musicians really need that experience with orchestra. And we also have something called the Laureate Ensemble, which is another incredible opportunity for young musicians to play with instrumentalists that are the same as them. We have flute ensembles, we have violin ensembles, we have so many more different ones that are encouraging young musicians to get together and play together, directed by some esteemed musicians in the US and all around the world as well. So lots to look forward to, and I'm sure everyone will be really interested. Just check out our websites at virtualconcerthalls.com. We have soundespressivocompetition.com. But before I show you what we have in store for today's show, there's also one more quick video about the orchestra auditions that are coming up, and there's a deadline for that, which is January 1st, 2024. So get in your applications. We have already received so many, and they're of such high level, so there's not much time left. Please submit your application, and in the meantime, have a look at this trailer.
Cold Orchestra is back.
Our new season of auditions for classical musicians is now available. Performance opportunities for students, young professionals, and seasoned artists.
Perform a concerto with orchestras around the world. We have 4 orchestras this season, perform with orchestras throughout the US, Czechia, and Egypt. New this season, opportunities for composers to have their orchestral works recorded by the Boulder Symphony Orchestra, mastered and distributed on the world's most known music streaming platforms.
Audition live from the comfort of your own home. Get live evaluations from expert judges and expand your online presence through our international internet broadcasts. Additional award and performance opportunities are also available. Visit our website for full details. Don't miss out on these wonderful opportunities to advance as a musician and perform on a world-renowned stage. We look forward to hearing your performances.
So what's amazing about these opportunities is it's all around the world, and we are becoming quite an international organization, and we're just so pleased to have this season up ahead. Leading up to these big performances and big auditions, which we'll also live stream for everybody to watch. Every day we do a show. Every day we are either interviewing amazing musicians out there, or pedagogues, educators, music promoters, managers, and we also have a documentary series that's out every Thursday and Sunday that explores Beethoven's symphony alongside the narration and the commentary by Larry Rapchak. These are incredible productions that we have, and the incredible Dr. Anna and I usually make a little comments, some suggestions, some really cool insights that we want to share before and after the show. So please join us for those as well. And in light of these amazing musician interviews and topics, I want to introduce today the incredible Christina Duncan. She is a wonderful violinist, educator, content creator, and administrator who is embarking on a very illustrious career. She is the producer of classical music films, particularly the most recent series, The Classical Violin Technique, which aims to preserve the teaching method of Professor Michael Frischenschlager while making classical music education accessible on YouTube. This series has been praised worldwide by incredible people like Rachel Barton-Pine and YouTube star Roman Kim. She also released a 1-hour documentary series in conversation with Professor Michael Frischenschlager, which premiered in May 2023 on My Fidelio and also in Austrian National News. As a violinist, she is incredible and has performed in major halls such as the Golden Hall of Vienna Musikverein and Schönbrunn Palace, as well as the Bruckner House in Linz. She is such an incredible musician, but also administrator. She has all these other things that she does, which we'll talk about, and all in order to give you, music lovers and musicians, a way to understand what a career means that's not just performing, but also different facets. And so let's bring onto the stage Christina. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. It's a real honor to be here today.
Yeah, it's really amazing. Please tell us where you're coming to us from and what you're doing at the moment and what's going on in your life.
So yes, I'm originally from Canada, so I'm from Vancouver, and I'm working in Vienna right now. So I'm in Salzburg for the holidays, and it's just really nice to be here right now.
Is there a lot of snow where you're at? What's it looking like now?
There is no snow in Salzburg currently, but also not in Canada, so I feel like I'm not
I
really
know
missing out.
there's like a very thin layer outside, and it's very sad. We had like rain a couple of days ago, and so all that wonderful snow just sort of got flushed away. So,
Oh
but
dear.
in any case, we still have our amazing conversation to be had. Tell us about your interest in um, producing classical music education films and series. Where did that start?
Well, I spent the greater part of my life moving for, yeah, classical music education. So I moved to Germany when I
Mm.
was 17 to study with at a music pre-college there, and then I moved to McGill and had my bachelor's studies there. And yes, and when I went to Orford, the very first year I went to McGill, and I met Professor Michael Frischenschlager, which made a huge impact
Mm.
on my yeah, perspective on music education and how you can study technique. So then I had this continued goal during my bachelor's on that I wanted to end up in Vienna and study with Professor Frischenschlager. So that really did help me, and that experience at Orford was very yeah, impactful for my um, yeah, musical life. But since this, I
Hmm.
haven't spent very much time at home. Like, and even when I was a child studying, my parents would have to drive me very far distances for violin lessons. And so when I arrived in Vienna and I saw this world of violin technique and the way they studied there and how difficult it was to get in, I thought that we could preserve his life work in the book and the method, but also make it accessible for students that might not be able to travel such great distances or to get to Vienna. And so then we decided to film the series. And
Mm.
yeah, and so that's kind of how it started.
Nice. And tell us a little bit about Professor Michael Frischenschlager for those who may not have heard of him or have been living under a rock, perhaps.
No. Yes, so Professor Michael Frischenschlager is an Austrian violin teacher. His father was also a prolific um, Austrian composer and teacher, and his father was the teacher of Herbert von Karajan, and his mother was the teacher of the von Trapp family, like the original von Trapp family from Sound of Music.
That's incredible.
And so from a very young age, he was influenced by all of these great names and had all these wonderful colleagues. And so then
Hmm.
he joined the Philharmonic very young, I think like as a late teenager or in his early 20s. And then through this, he had developed this method of the Viennese Violin School. So the Viennese Violin School started through Mozart's father, so Leopold Mozart.
Oh,
And
wow.
wrote a textbook, like a treatise on violin playing, that is, I guess, one of the first serious works analyzing how to play the violin. And because Mozart was such a his son Wolfgang Mozart was such a prolific composer, to play Wolfgang Mozart from a technical historical background, you would always use the textbook from Leopold Mozart. And this combination of writing a technique book, having a composition or like composer's son, gave Vienna and Salzburg this long-standing tradition of being a kind of a leader in violin playing or string playing.
Yeah.
So they've made many textbooks since then, and Professor Frischenschlager has wrote the latest treatise on violin playing until someone new comes along. Um, yeah, and
Wow,
there's
that's incredible. So just to dig deeper into it, what are certain differences you realize as a violinist that are different depending whether you've studied the violin in the US and this Vienna, like what was the are there certain drastic differences or
there
what is it
are.
like? Hmm.
So just from my perspective alone, I think historically there's about three very strong violin schools. So the Viennese Violin School, a Russian school, and then the New York American style. And so someone from Canada would have been more familiar with the New York style. And I think from that it would be much louder, much more, a bit more on the string, and there's a big focus on being together and this very metronomical, brilliant, precise sound. And the Viennese have a much more stronger focus on articulation, where you lift the bow. They lift the bow a lot more. There's more pauses,
Mm.
which is why Mozart's music sounds very light if you were to play it in the Viennese way. Um, and so that would be one of the things that I think the Vienna Philharmonic is very famous for, a very light, playful kind of a musical style. And the New York Philharmonic, if I was just to say something, it would be a much louder, very precise, broader strokes. But this is just my personal experience basis. It's not
Yeah, that's really cool. It's very quite similar to perhaps different technique schools in the piano world too. The different kind of way you approach technique. And can you tell us a bit more about when you're performing now? Are you more the Viennese style, or do you adopt some things of the New York style depending on what you're playing? What is that like for you?
Oh, for me personally, yes, I've been studying more of the Viennese works just because I'm here right now, so
Yeah,
I'm
of
trying to
course.
like
Yeah.
put that into my repertoire as much as possible. Yes, I think yes, you would try and apply things in the ways that you like the piece requires, and depending on where that composer was from. But in generally, I think the basis of string playing is very unified. Especially for violin, it's not maybe like some other instruments like bass, where depending on the region, they have completely different bow
Mm.
holds or expectations. For violin, it is very standardized. And so, if anything, it's becoming so standardized that people are worried about the different schools losing their individuality. There's not so much
Mm.
of a Russian school anymore. Um, Compared to the past. And so, yeah, Anna Sophie Mutter wrote a big article recently in the BBC
Wow.
last month about this phenomenon of players achieving a certain sound and then becoming kind of the same. So there's definitely that to be aware of too.
That's quite a controversial topic. I can imagine because you I guess in light of competitions or in light of this social media perhaps, where you can hear everyone and you can hear all these different things. So you start to get a conglomeration of many different kind of styles, and maybe distinction or individuality might not be as emphasized. What are your thoughts on what she wrote?
Yes, I agree. I think there's a big risk when a young player does have their own sound because, for example, if they were in competitions, often they are penalized for that because you have to choose your voice over the voice of the composers or the teachers that you're maybe being influenced from, and that takes a
Yeah,
certain inner strength to pull that
yeah.
through. So I think that is definitely, yeah, a topic that each musician has to find for themselves and
Hmm.
yeah, really stay. I don't want to like staying true to yourself because essentially you have to work so hard that the music is then playable to you and then getting it to a musical level. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a difficult amount of work. And in our series, we demonstrate the technique exercises and then always have a musical example of when you can use them to try and
Nice.
pull it back to say that like technique is the foundations or the basis to then play beautiful music and it's not one or the other.
Yeah. Well, let's play a little clip of that sort of video excerpt, which shows this sort of musical example following a technique. But it just before we play, it appears to me that technique is something, especially with this series, something you kind of adopt and you learn and you kind of embed in your mind and body and spirit, perhaps before you decide to kind of be more adventurous.
Oh yeah.
And so you at least have the fundamentals. You can then you kind of know what rules you can break, perhaps.
Yes, and you have like the self-assurance to break them, perhaps. Yes.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, well, let's have a look at this clip and we can talk about it afterwards.
Sounds great.
Bow retakes. A seamless landing from the air to the string requires a precise flexibility in the right hand. Bow retakes, also known as the landing exercise, follow the silent exercises which are demonstrated in the group class video. Musical example of detache and bow retakes. Fritz Kreisler, Preludium and Allegro.
Well, there you go. That's the kind of musical example following the technique, right? Yeah.
I tried to make this series like a musical dictionary, so it always says the name of the stroke, gives a definition and what it looks like in sheet music, and then the person plays it like as precisely or as fast as possible, whatever is needed for it to be like the highest level, and then the musical example at the end to try and tie everything in together. So in that video, there went
Yeah.
5 different bow strokes that were featured, and then that
Yeah.
video would like show the majority of them.
Wow. Okay. So this is sort of a taster for basically the whole series. Like this is sort of how it's constructed.
Yes. And
Mm.
the impressive thing from the player's perspective was that the whole video was shot in one take. So they had been rehearsing for months.
Yeah.
Yeah, just so that they could play it. So even though the exercises are cut in the series, it was still filmed in one take. This was super important
Wow.
to me because I wanted to show a series for children or like for students that was achievable and it wasn't over like it wasn't edited at all in the sense of technique. So that is like if you do practice a lot and you have the right mentors in your life, you can get here. Um,
Yeah, and well, let's have a look at as we're talking. There's like a lot of behind the scenes kind of footage that we have here, thanks to you. And what was the filming like? What did it look like for you? And was it where were you to film all these? And what was the setup like?
So that was a huge endeavor of my life. So the book was published in
Mm,
2018, and there was a big celebration around this book. And one of Professor students, Timur Melnik, was telling me like that some of his students in Asia were not understanding the different strokes or how fast the
mm.
exercises were played in Vienna. And so he asked me to record some of these exercises and just send them to him. And it so my mind, it started out with like a little project like filmed with iPhone to becoming increasingly more professional. So
Yeah, it looked
that
really
was
good. Look at those cameras and everything. It
so
looks
yeah,
really
that this
incredible.
picture
Yeah.
is if we hold on this picture, it's the lighting. Since there's so many chandeliers in the background, the violin player would be black on the screen. So we had to take down all the lights in Schönbrunn, turn them around so that they were on the player because normally the lights would be on the stage. So we had to put all the lights directing towards the audience. And there in our videos now you can see the violin clearly. So that was just the lengths that we
Yeah.
had to go to film in such a beautiful location. There was like a lot to look at from lighting, from sound, and then yes. So
Yeah,
if
these are
anything,
really big professional equipment.
it was, and this is a friend of mine, Vincent Bueno, and he was actually Austria's candidate for Eurovision and a huge star in Spain
What?
for millions of people. And it was Corona, and our film team could not fly in from London, so he took over the whole project a week in advance. So him and
Wow.
his team, Lawrence Carla, and then our other editor, Sat Solanki, completely saved my project because we had won the rights to film at Schönbrunn Palace through the Music University, our director, Frau Sush. And so there was only one chance. We only had 2 days to film, and if we had
Mm.
lost this like short window, then yeah, the series could have looked very different. So that was another.
Yeah, that's no, it's
Like
really incredible. So just to reemphasize, this was at the Schönbrunn Palace.
it was, and that is the
Mm.
private theater of the emperor himself. So you can't actually go in there. But it was where Mozart played for Empress Maria Theresa when he was 5 years old. So there's like so much Viennese history.
Wow.
And we got to film there, which is actually because it was a private theater, it's smaller, so it actually fits into the camera angle. If we had filmed in a bigger opera house, you would not see as much, just
And what
because
was
of
the
the
sound like in there? I guess just amazing
very
and so
because
wow.
it's for opera singers, just so their voices really.
Yeah.
There's only 250 seats, so it's really for a violin player or any kind of musician, really the ideal hall. The emperor knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
So that was another, huge honor for the project. It was also the first film series ever to be filmed there. So, yeah, huge thank you to our university for believing in us. I realize,
That's
yeah,
really cool. No, it's
yeah,
really cool. I want to show everyone another clip of this. This is titled Scales Without Shifting. So
yes.
can you tell us a little bit about this video and then we'll play that excerpt?
Sounds great. So, one of the big aspects about Frischenschlager's method is that he puts all of his exercises have a duo form. That means you
Mm.
and his class. Okay, so every Tuesday we have a 2-hour technique class where everyone in the class, no matter what year they are, play the exercises together. And so this allows the violin players to practice ensemble work and like lining up things, which really helps for quartet, chamber music, and any kind of orchestral playing.
Of course, yeah.
This scale series is unique or pretty unique to Frischenschlager in the sense that it's 2 octaves without shifting, which is uncommon for violin.
Hmm.
And it's mostly for orchestral playing in general. And we do in the earlier parts of the video, which we won't show because it's so long, we practice it with whole bows really slowly in different dynamics. And it's always the extremes. You just want really piano or super forte, which is loud, so that you can yeah, mezzo piano is just the easiest one that everyone just normally plays. So that is being trained in this video, and it's mostly just to show if you practice how fast you can get things to line up, which is just so important for any kind of orchestral musician. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and for some kind of background also, I remember because we met at Orford Music. We didn't even
that's
talk about
didn't
the music camp that bonded us and introduced us to each other. Um, you had during these 2 weeks that Michael Frischenschlager was teaching, again, you had these technique classes, and were you doing some of these exercises? How many can you get through in a day? Or yeah, what's the schedule like? What was that like for you?
Oh yeah, that's always really lovely. So Professor Frischenschlager will take the technique exercises around the world. So we got through two programs. So we did these exercises of scales and the next one, which is with shifting. And it's really interesting because you have these players who are just phenomenal and just that chance to get back to the basics and really see because often when you do play these scales, you're a child or you're smaller,
Mm.
and now coming back to that as an adult and seeing how you actually play the fundamentals and the other nice thing about that is it's not in your private lesson. Everyone comes together, the whole class can have fun or be scared together because he's quite a scary
Yeah.
person. And just have that so you get to play your repertoire with him in your lesson and then have your technique looked at in a group, which is just really a bonding experience. So
Is it sort of like
yeah.
a is it sort of like a yoga class where everyone's doing the same thing, but then
Yeah.
Professor Frischenschlager would go into and oh no, you can adjust here and downward dog could look a little bit
Exactly.
different. What is it? Yeah.
That's like on a good day. On a bad day, he'll be like, "You play this," and then you have to stand there in front of
Oh.
everybody and play everything. So, which is good for getting like the motivation to practice is high. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's scary for sure, but I think it really emphasizes the fundamentals. I don't remember the last class I had where we all got together with grand pianos and we all did B major scale together or something. As a
I mean, just
pianist,
the
it's like this.
logistics of that is completely
Yeah, it
nuts.
just doesn't happen. Well, let's have a quick watch of this clip now and see this sort of thing in action.
Sounds good.
Scales beginning on the note G, open string. Rhythm, 30-second notes. Scales beginning on the note A, 8th position. Rhythm, 30-second notes.
I mean, that's really scary. I'll be let's say crapping myself, shall we say, trying to get that together.
Yeah, it's not easy. And now,
No.
like before, we would tour and play these like scales, and it didn't matter what speed you played it in or what
Yeah.
position. Now that the videos are out, everyone has to play it that high in its position on the time. So
It looks
we made
terribly
our life very
difficult.
hard for ourselves.
It looks awfully hard. And also what's
Difficult.
like I mean you record it's difficult enough to record something like a I don't know a partita violin partita. You get but you have some time you can kind of but you have two people there, you've got the cameras rolling and it's just scales. It's just pure technique. I don't know,
Yes.
that's scary.
No, a huge shout out to all. It was actually a really fun casting process in the sense that we invited violinists from all over the place. Um, and just actually having a project with lots of violin players is kind of rare because usually they're a soloist or alone. And so it
Mm.
was really fun for everyone just to hang out. And it was very stressful. Everyone got their scripts about 3 months in advance. And then they were sending us videos of them practicing it just to make sure the professor would correct them.
Wow.
because we knew the pressure. We had to film 20 videos in 2 days at Schönbrunn, which meant
Mm.
everyone had one chance to film their whole video perfectly once. And then if there was something that they wanted to refilm, they had the option. But actually, since they were so trained and so prepared, we didn't have any difficulties, and everyone did do it really well.
Wow.
Really phenomenal, and I really appreciated that they put so much effort in. And
Yeah. And we have
yeah,
some other photos too. This is really beautiful, huh? This is the whole setup and also the Schönbrunn Hall in background. That's beautiful.
it was really nice. And oh yeah, this was so we did a Professor Frischenschlager himself does not appear in the technique videos just for the pace. So then I wanted to demonstrate his life story and his
Mm.
just very profound musicality. So in that picture, there's our musicologist Rudolf Eigmuller, and
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
together we wrote a parallel series, which is an hour long, about his thoughts on music education, thoughts on music, and yeah, his life story. He personally studied with Menuhin, and so that was a filmed interview, but we also wrote a little essay, like a profile essay on Frischenschlager's life, which is now also available so that um, the players would understand where this technique did come from. That was
Yeah.
really important to me. So that is this picture,
Wow.
his technique book, and then two essays that we wrote on the Viennese Violin School and Professor Frischenschlager's life. Um,
What I
so
love about this whole thing and
actually, and
is
that's
your
sorry, that's Carlo. He interviewed
yeah.
on conductors. So he has an episode of himself, and he's also now the
Oh.
Kapellmeister in Salzburg, like their opera house. So
Wow.
it's so nice to see like the careers of the musicians.
Yeah, these
Yeah.
are very legitimate musicians who have great performing careers, who have been influenced, who have been impacted and educated under this technique class and technique. What would you say, a treatise, perhaps?
Yeah, and I think it was just really fun. Like our youngest player at the time was 14 years old, and our oldest is 25. So it's really I liked it. It was like teenagers also showing
Yeah.
other teenagers what's
Did you play
possible.
in this? Are you
I did.
featured?
I
Ah,
had a
there we
video
go.
cut intro. So it was
Very
the most
good.
stressful day of my life because we had to like film everything and then like to then play was a big challenge for me.
Yeah,
But
because I can imagine how difficult it is with all the production and having to organize people and when they come on and everything. But then to
yeah,
have to pick up the violin and also play is a mighty
well,
challenge.
we also had signs because no one was allowed to walk into the room, so everyone had their watch and was time coded and knew when to enter the door. It was
Whoa.
so precise because of the like the nature of the building. So that was really yeah, a very nice time in my life, but very stressful. And yeah, this
What?
was a book, and it was just like imagining what a book could sound like or look like. Yeah,
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I mean, I love the joy in your face too with all this. And I know you brought this to Orpha. I know you bring it around. What's next in terms of where you will promote this and what you want to do with it?
well, we might have a movie theater premiere with our university, and that would be yeah, cutting it in a way that would be then in a movie theater just for the Viennese audience, and then promoting it further on YouTube because we've only released the first 5 episodes, and we have another like 15 to go, and then
15 to go. That's
yeah,
fantastic.
I'm really
How are
looking
you finding the kind of release of it and the feedback you've gotten? Has there been a rewarding sort of back and forth now that everything's done and you actually get to show the public?
Yes, it's really, I get texted pictures of little kids now playing violin because they had seen this years earlier. And somebody made a 3D printed pencil with a clip of a violin bow because Professor has this exercise where you hold the pencil and do bow exercises, but it's just lighter and easier. And this person had printed out the frog of a bow using a 3D printer and then put them together. And then, so just seeing how
Whoa.
people interact with the videos and how they practice technique in their own way is like very rewarding and just fun. So trying to respond to everybody is like
I'd
always.
imagine also when you have this sort of when you've been there for all the episodes and I know there's a little exercise, there's a workbook and everything as well, right? How has that impacted your playing or if you teach, like does it impact the way you teach or impart your wisdom and insight? Because it's one thing to learn and study under Frischenschlager, but it's maybe another to have produced this incredible technique series as well. It's sort of like embedding more and more of this into your brain and your subconscious.
That's a really good question. I noticed I can maybe define technique very quickly, like give the definition because I spent so
Mm.
much time trying to make it as easy as possible. I mean, music will never be easy, or like watching these doesn't make music any easier. It just makes it maybe more accessible. Um, but if someone's playing something and they have this problem, like your bow is bouncing, then you can narrow it down very specifically to what the problem could be and what solutions you can have in a stepwise journey to, like, you could play
Mm.
this person and this one. So maybe being able to define things a little bit more precisely, which is, I
Yeah.
think conductors kind of struggle with this sometimes. Like, you have
Mm.
this huge score and how is the bow supposed to be reacting, and all you have is like a sheet in front of you, and then knowing what is supposed to be happening. But I think that's a lifelong journey, and the more I learn, the more you realize there is, like, the journey just keeps going, and it's very fun to explore. Yeah.
Wow. Well, for everybody watching, I hope they have a chance to check out. I think all the release stuff so far, the videos and the material, it's on your YouTube
Yes,
channel. Is that right? Okay.
yes, it's all under my YouTube channel, which is just the name. But if you Google my name or Frischenschlager's name, it will come out. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I hope everyone will check it out. And I want to pivot to asking you sort of what your view is on classical music and digitalization. A lot of all these sort of technique things, as well as the really cool thing you did with the interview, which is, I think, in our day and age, even more and more important. We want to see the person behind. We want to hear the life story. What is your journey with sort of putting and placing their stories onto the internet and our social media?
Oh, this is a question I would love to get your opinion on. I think that your work is just so, like, alive, and yeah. So if you have any opinions, please let me know. I would
Well, tell
love
me
to.
yours first. Tell me yours
Okay.
first. What's your story like so far, and then we can kind of have a conversation about it.
Well, I think coming from North America, we're very much like they have the like they'll jump on board right away. Maybe not classical musicians, but in general. Austria is the complete opposite. So in that
Mm.
sense, it's very closed. Even our university doesn't overly advertise it is full scholarship, but they don't use social media to the full extent that you would see in a North American university. I think for classical music and digitalization, it's difficult. On one hand, I think the musicians have this opportunity to embrace something like finance models, like how can I fund a career through
Hmm.
the internet? How can I build an audience and all of these things? On the same time, you're being compared to all the great recordings of the past or any recording that's currently coming out, and you're being compared to something that is usually not even real. It's like the recordings are so edited that they sound beautiful and they're professional. But can you emulate that in your average performance? Maybe not.
Mm.
So you have this expectations versus the distractions of the internet. So I think that's definitely a real concern. I'm very glad that I was a teenager without social media like our generations before it
Hmm.
became very
Hmm.
prominent. I think that would be very difficult now for teenagers perhaps to not get so focused or comparing. But I think for opportunities, it makes the most sense to embrace it and just to try and see how it comes. And I have a lot of friends learning music theory online. There seems to
Oh.
be this, like, wave of, like, what is key signature, what are things, and, like, finding these tutorials that do make it very accessible. So I think especially where there's fewer options for getting lessons, you can definitely um, learn a lot. So I think that's a very positive thing. Yeah, what about you?
It's a difficult world, but I like to also always look back on sort of great figures of the past and see how they use media. I mean, Robert Schumann was a music critic and
Yeah.
very embedded in the artistic life as well as the literary life. He's a great writer. We have Franz Liszt, who was very good at promotion and as a publicist as well, and trying to get concerts together and raising money. You have, you know, these composers, these people also had incredible lives outside of music. And with Leonard Bernstein using the media of television to really broadcast concerts as well as the nature of music. It's not just classical. It's how rock, how opera, how musical theater, how jazz and pop music kind of infuses each other with vibrancy. It's not just one world that we live. We're in a bigger world where music is sort of coming in and out. You have Beethoven, who used many popular folk tunes and things as part of his compositions, which only if you were there in the time would you know. Oh yeah, that's that tune. Oh, oh yeah, that's cool. Now we sort of don't have that sort of knowledge.
He would
And
have been
so
copy striked.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, they will be muted on on social media. Exactly. And so I think it's I love what you said about education. I think education is a massive opportunity to use social media to. I think it's also a great way for, because of the democratization of social media, it's free to make an account, and because of that, it sort of allows everyone to have a voice, for better or for worse. But it's also a way for everyone to try it out and use stuff like this and streaming, live streaming, and interviewing people, meeting people, to see what happens. It's something I think to embrace, but it's not without its difficulties. And I think to just use it as a way to learn something new, to embrace a new technology that has the potential to reach a different audience. I think this is something that the great composers and great artists of our past also used. But if you do it just for the following and the followers, and then you're just following the figures and the numbers, I think that's going to make you quite depressed because it's really difficult. It really is quite difficult.
And it's always like a drop in the bucket compared to any like you can compare for the rest of your life. And yeah, I should also mention that our project was funded by a crowd fundraiser. Like complete, like the internet did save the project in a sense.
Oh,
The crowd
amazing.
fundraiser was like also in the worst time, like it was like 2020,
Yeah,
um, and it still raised like 20,000 Canadian dollars just from the filming
that's
and people sharing
incredible.
clips. And it really brought together Professor Frischenschlager's other students and people who liked violin technique and everything. And so
Mm.
that was definitely one positive aspect from financing that social media really did help the project with. And so very fun.
That's
But
wonderful.
yeah,
Wow.
our
I thought
funding
about,
goal.
yeah, that's another incredible thing about our technology now, that crowdfunding is a lot easier, and you can use social media to get the word out and to connect with people who you may have not heard of or haven't heard from in a long time.
Definitely, because I think the traditional model would have been just have benefit concerts, but in this case, that would have been so localized, and so that it really did broaden the horizons for the project. And yeah, that was really
Wow.
fascinating to
We have
see.
one more clip I want to show before we kind of wrap up our show, and I almost forgot about it. And I'm thinking it's very important to show everybody because he's the star of today's topic, and
Absolutely.
it's a little snippet of Professor Michael Frischenschlager. Do you want to introduce the video and then we'll play it?
Sure. So yes, Professor Frischenschlager is still teaching at our university, and he bikes to the university every day. And so this is our musicologist asking Professor Frischenschlager how he gets his energy to teach, and yeah, what his joy is in music.
Let's have a look at it. Thanks.
Amazing is that you're closely associated to the University of Vienna, that you're closely associated to the University of Music and Performing Arts here in Vienna for now 50 years. You were rector, you're now emeritus now for over 16 years, and you're still teaching your own class every week. Where do you get this enormous energy from?
Well, the first thing is, I must say every day, thank you that I'm healthy. Because without health, you have no energy.
Of course.
And then I think, and of course, I'm always grateful that I can still teach. There are many countries where if somebody is emeritus, has to disappear. But for instance, at Juilliard, the people, the famous teacher can teach until they want, until they, in Vienna it is like that, and I think it is beautiful, it is wonderful. But for me, there are two sources for energy. The one is I am an intensive musician, and for me, the first, most important source is music, to make music and to teach music.
Yes.
And this really, I can feel sometimes if I'm not so well up, but I go to the university, I can teach my students, I forget not to be so well. And so this is one source. The other source is really this feeling that you as teacher are there to help students, in this case to help young violinists, to make the biggest possible, greatest possible progress according to their talents in their study, and to help them not only in music, in teaching, also to help them, to give them help in their daily life, to try to find for them scholarships, and yes, to be there for them aside from the teaching.
Wow.
So this is, for me, these are the main sources for
That's so beautiful.
teaching.
I think there is nothing to add to it. Professor, 1,000 thanks for the interview. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
I thank you very much.
Wow, he really, that's an incredible little clip there. And I remember when I met him in Orford Music, he always was so grateful. And I think it's this gratitude that really you can really feel, even in this video.
Yeah, I think so too. And this just being there for the students. And I think Dorothy DeLay was the same way in finding scholarships and making sure that the students were like stable. It was just, yeah, very, I can really appreciate this.
It's really quite important because I think teachers are so important, and Michael Frischenschlager really pinpoints this. It's not just teaching technique, it's not just about that. It's about the daily life, it's about opportunities, it's about giving them a way to make a career for themselves and taking care of them. You know, a lot of artists generally have different issues that they may have to face, and as a musician you really don't know where your next paycheck may be sometimes, and so that's very inspiring. I really love that.
Yeah, I think it's a very nice way to like, conclude.
Yeah.
I was really
Well,
happy.
before we thanks and say goodbye to everybody watching, I want to tell you everybody a bit about more about our upcoming season. We have a upcoming deadline of January 1st. Make sure you submit that for the co-orchestra auditions, which include many different orchestras around the world that are waiting for your application. And we have an audition process in January, which is also live streamed just like this. And we'll do all the tech checks. We'll make sure everyone can not only play for judges, but also for a live audience who's watching. Just a really important note that all the judges are watching live as well. And so they give live feedback right after you play, which is very special, I think, to our organization. And I really appreciate that because right after you play, if you get a chance to talk to the judges or to hear feedback, it's really incredible. And so then you're going to have a wonderful closure to your experience, and I really love that about our organization. We have a Beethoven show every Thursday and Sunday, like I mentioned. We feature different part of a Beethoven symphony. Currently, we're on the 6th Symphony, and Larry Rapchak, who is part of the Architects of Music and New Media Productions Worldwide, he has narrated and written a wonderful commentary about each symphony, really, and he is just phenomenal. So check us out for that, which is amazing. I want to give a big hand to our collaborators, our partners, people who have been a really important part of our season. These are amazing organizations who support us by giving musicians, music lovers and musicians, opportunities from recording contracts to music library to summer courses, master classes, an opportunity to study under great teachers and also play with amazing conductors and orchestras around the world. I want to give a big thanks to our team, a wonderful team which we're enlarging, we're growing as a team. These people make sure that we have shows on every single day. We are on live every day, and even throughout the holidays we have our shows on, and we are live stream on all the social media platforms. And so this is a wonderful opportunity if you want to join us, to collaborate with us, and for we are always seeking partners, especially for the upcoming season and the season beyond. And with that, I want to give a big thanks to the amazing Christina. Welcome to the show, and I'm so glad you were here to show us this incredible wisdom from Michael Frischenschlager as well as his technique.
Oh, Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. I hope we get to do another part together and talk more about what you're doing. There's amazing things in your bio which we haven't even started to discuss, which include you being representing the Wagner Society in Vienna. You're going to be a young scholar and doing all sorts of different things within your career, which I would love to talk about next time. So thank you for being a part of the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a huge honor.
Yay. Okay. With that, we'll see everybody soon, and thank you for joining us. See you next time.